Welcome to another episode of Superfast Corner. I'm your host, Kevin Mueller. Today we'll be talking about a new differential that will be coming to the market, the Dual Pro Diff by MC3WLS. This one here is a prototype diff. It's the latest in differential technology for the Mini Z scale. Not much has changed in ball bearing design since Kyosho brought out their first version years ago. Unlike conventional Mini Z ball bearing diffs, the Dual Pro Diff utilizes a thrust bearing to control axial loads. Why is this important? When you tighten the adjustment nut to control the amount of pressure between the two plates, the force from the adjustment nut pushes the outer hub onto the E-clip in a conventional diff. The radial bearing that pushes against this E-clip is not designed for these types of forces, and this can cause binding and inconsistent differential action. It also puts excessive stress on the radial bearing of a conventional diff. The Dual Pro Diff eliminates these negative features of conventional diffs. The use of a thrust bearing in place of a radial bearing allows you to make finer adjustments and makes the distribution of power to each wheel more precise, providing a smoother throttle feel and a more consistent driving experience. This is achieved because the outer hub pushes against the thrust bearing opposed to a radial bearing, allowing it to rotate freely under compression. Let's take a closer look at the Dual Pro Diff. As you can see, there is no E-clip. Instead, a special nut is used that screws onto the shaft. This makes it easier to take apart the diff for maintenance. You can actually take apart the diff, clean, and rebuild the diff without needing to loosen the adjustment nut. This leaves you with the same settings you had before you cleaned the diff. Why is it called the Dual Pro Diff? Well, it still has a radial bearing, just like conventional Mini Z diffs. It's inserted into the back of the outer hub and takes the radial forces. So the diff utilizes two bearings, one for the axial loads and one for the radial loads, hence the name Dual Pro Diff. Another advantage of the diff is that you can set it to have the tiniest amount of slippage each time the throttle is applied, unlike conventional diffs that are either too tight or too loose. This can be useful for beginners and in mod class where the power may be too overwhelming. Thanks for listening and stay super fast.